Hello, mixtresses and mixters. This is Mixtressrae, and you're watching Mixtress Video. So I just kind of basically wanted to hang out with you guys for a minute. So my excuse for doing that right now, sorry, my computer is restarting and doing some weird things, so I had to type in my password. Okay. So my excuse for doing that today is I'm just going to show you, I have been like snowed in the last week, which has been amazing. I love being off work. I love like those days where there's just an excuse not to do anything. Like I'm totally here for it. So I want to burn a candle, so I need to find one first. Okay, here we go. How are you guys doing? If you are like me in the middle of most of the United States is dealing with the crazy, make that look super beautiful and centered, the crazy like polar vortex situation right now. I hope that you guys are staying warm and everything is good. I'm just gonna show you like I've been basically like altering decks lately. So with the exception of one of these 5 decks, I'm just gonna show you guys the 5 decks that I have trimmed somewhat recently. This one, it's been a while since I trimmed it. This is the German version of Modern Witch, but I'm just gonna show you what it looks like. Oh, I need to get like a tarot size card. Hold on. Just so I can like show you guys exactly. Just in case you're thinking about doing projects like this yourself, I've been having a lot of fun doing this kind of stuff the last week. So what I did with this deck, and I have shown this on another video since I did do this one a few months ago, is I trimmed not only the borders off, but also the titles. And this started out as a standard tarot size. And whenever I finished with it, as you can see, let's just get real sciencey today. Why not? What else are we doing with our lives? So it is now like 3/4 of an inch shorter and a little over 1/4 of an inch skinnier now. So I did make these. This is kind of like almost playing card size now, taking off the titles and the borders. But I really like it. And I mean, if you're really familiar with RWS style decks, then it's not hard to go without the titles. And this deck is one that you could do that with because there was a full title on the bottom of every single card. So there you go. And then I edged it also in like varying shades of pink Crayola marker. And it had to be varying shades basically just because they were kind of drying up as I was using them. So I didn't mean for it to be varying shades, but that's just what happened. And then this last week I have trimmed Gothmancy Tarot. Basically it had, the borders on it were pretty large. So I just trimmed it down so the borders weren't quite as big. This is a tricky one to do that with because several of the cards have like artwork that goes outside of the borders. So I basically just went through and I found the ones where the artwork overlaps the most on the borders. Like this one is one. And I made sure that I wasn't going to cut off any. Like there are incidents. I don't think I cut off. I didn't actually cut off part of that arm, but there were like a couple that I cut off a little bit of the edge, but I just decided that was okay. Where is it? I think it's like think it's the Queen of Wands. Oh, my Queen of Wands is, this is the deck I'm using this week. So anyway, the Queen of Wands has like a pumpkin on the side, and I did cut off a little piece of the pumpkin. But I just wanted to make this one because it was kind of awkwardly large and the borders were a little too big. I just wanted to make it a little bit more of a manageable size. Plus, I had edged it in purple, and the shade of purple that I chose didn't really match the deck. So I wanted to cut off the purple edging that I did. And I thought I was going to edge it in a different color. I have a color that is this that would have looked nice, but I don't... Personally, I like to match a color that I'm edging a deck to a color that's on the back, and I don't really think that would have worked just with all the other colors that are in the deck. I personally don't think that the back of the cards on Gothmancy matches the front to me. That's just me though. And this did make it much closer to tarot size. You can see it is just slightly taller, and it's actually the same width as a tarot size now, whereas it was just like a little bit oversized before. I will say, if you were thinking about trimming your Gothmancy, I don't know if it was just me, but I had problems with, like, I think just because the cardstock is so like thin and slippery, it would kind of slip under my ruler on my paper cutter, so it's not quite, it's hard to tell with it edged in black, but it's not, yeah, you can kind of tell it's a little bit jagged. It wasn't perfect, so like now when I'm riffle shuffling, it's a little chunky, it's not super smooth, but I don't regret doing it because I like them. I think it looks prettier with the smaller black borders. I assume that whenever they do a future edition, they'll probably like take the borders down a little bit because they were just like a little too chunky. But I like it better now, so I did that this last week. I don't even know if this video is going to be of interest to anyone, but I'm just showing you guys what I did. Oh, sorry, that was probably loud. Just showing you guys what I did so you can choose for yourself if you'd like to do the same. This is another deck this is Dark Goddess. I seem to have gotten some candle detritus on my finger. Dark Goddess, I have made it, so it was another one that was like awkwardly big. And I made it is now pretty much exactly the same height as a standard tarot card and about 1/4 of an inch thinner. So I cut off pretty much the entire side borders, and I cut off a little bit of the top and bottom. And I'm really happy with it. It had like mirrored gold gilding, which I don't like. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to edge it. This is what the backs look like now. I haven't decided. I probably do want to edge it, and I'll probably edge it in like, see how this color on the borders, I don't know if you can tell, but it's kind of like a brownish dark gray. It's definitely like brownish gray, and I do think I have a color like that I can edge this deck with. This is a very thick deck, like the Modern Witch Tarot, the non-German version. It's very thick, so it's still really hard to shuffle. Even though I cut it pretty evenly, it's still very hard to shuffle. But I really like this size is much more manageable because these were pretty big before. So that's Dark Goddess Tarot that I recently trimmed. Like, I've just been trimming decks, putting on old movies and trimming decks all week. And then I have also recently trimmed Sasarai Bito. The reason that I did this one, I trimmed it just a small amount because this is a standard tarot size deck, so I wasn't trying to get it smaller, and I like the borders on this deck. I wish I would have trimmed it a little less than I did and left a little bit more of the black borders on the edges. But my paper cutter, it's hard to be that precise. And then I don't like mirrored gold edging anyway, and that's what it had. So I just edged it in black because it has black borders. And okay. And it was a standard tarot size before, so this did make it about 1/4 of an inch smaller on each side. But I'm really happy with it because if you guys have Sasarai Bito, you know, like this type of cardstock, it's flexible and it's not too thick, but something about it, like it chips really, really badly on the edges. And since it was black borders, it was even more obvious how chipped it was on the edges. So it was just bad. So I wanted to get like the chipping off of the edges, and I, you know, just as a bonus, I was getting the gold gilding off, which is nice. 2 of these decks in these 5 that I'm showing you right now, I was able to get rid of the gold gilding. So I'm happy with this one. This one was pretty easy to do. I was able to get a really precise cut. And it only made it a tiny bit smaller, so it's not, I don't really like overly small or overly large decks, so, and I think it looks nice like this too. I mean, all I really did was take off what was already a pretty small, unobtrusive black border. And I'm pretty happy with that. I'm happy with all of these mods that I've done, except the Goth Mancy was just like a little bit, I'm not sure I would recommend trimming that one unless you're not a riffle shuffler. But I don't regret doing that one either because that one was huge. And then Desert Illuminations Tarot is another one. This is another one I would not recommend. Oh my god, is this one in order? Oh yeah, because I was going to do an unfair comparisons. I may still do that. Let me know in the comments. Yeah, it's in order. What you would like me to compare this deck to. Because I'd like to do an unfair comparisons with this deck. Okay, taking the borders off of this one did make it significantly little. Oh wow, almost a 1/2 inch. Yeah, that's crazy. 1/2 inch on both sides. This one I wouldn't necessarily recommend for everyone to trim. The reason why I did it is because it had white borders like this, basically, but they were kind of offset and crooked looking. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get rid of the borders, but it was also difficult to consistently get rid of. I ended up having to take a little bit of the artwork off, which I don't like to do, just because the borders were kind of uneven. Just sort of the overall printing quality of this deck isn't the best. Like, the colors are all reproduced really well. The finish on the cards is nice, but the cardstock itself is just not the best. So, or mostly it was just the offset printing. Like, the borders were just, they looked really crooked and they looked too big, and so I wanted to get rid of them. And I do think it looks pretty like this, but I would just caution you, if you do have this deck and you want to trim it, to just, you know, be very mindful about where you choose to cut. It was kind of a frustrating process. In retrospect, I kind of wish I would have just cut some of the border off instead of the full border. Although I'm not sure that would have, I love this deck so much. I'm not sure that would have had the desired effect, honestly. Because one of the things that bugged me was just how offset the images looked. And I did end up having to, just because of the nature of that, I ended up, like, some of them, like, because it's not totally consistent, so some of them I did cut off a little bit of the words on the bottom. Anyway, this one was kind of a frustrating process to trim, so this one, if I had to do again, I might just not trim it. But overall, I really, really love this deck. It's just so unlike anything else that I have, so every time I look at it, I'm like, oh my god, I love this deck so much. And I edged it in, it was a Crayola marker, but I'm really happy with the edging. I'm happy with the edging. Okay, so let me know in the comments what you want me to do in unfair comparisons. I want to do desert illuminations against something, and if nobody comments, I might even just do this video tomorrow. So if nobody comments in like the first 24 hours, I'll probably just pick something that I will compare it to. Yeah, so this is my silly little showing off a few of my deck mods I've done in the last week. I have, at this point, I feel like I'm pretty experienced in trimming decks and edging decks. So if you guys have any questions about that, or I could just give you, I don't have like a lot of advice. You can see if you look at my Modern Witch trimmed video, I show kind of the process on how I trim a deck, and it's pretty simple and straightforward. But as far as edging decks, I would recommend, if you have a black bordered deck like Goth Nancy or Sasarai Bito, and you want to edge it in black, in that case, Sharpie's great. Black Sharpie, wonderful. But if you are edging a deck in color, I would recommend staying away from Sharpie if you can, because it bleeds. So I usually will use Crayola markers if I'm edging a deck in a color, or use like those Copic markers. At Michael's you can get, I think the brand is called Artist's Loft. Actually, I might as well just pause this so I can show it to you guys. It's just got a brush tip on one side. These are like, you can buy them, and then a chisel tip. And both work. I think I usually use the brush tip, but the chisel tip works too. I really like this. I guess it just has like a lower alcohol content or something. It doesn't bleed very much, and you can kind of layer it. So you can do multiple coats. You can mix it up with other. I really like, I mean, this does cost like a few bucks per marker. Like this is like the Michael's brand, I think, but it's worth it. It lasts a long time. I had one that I did several decks with before I had to throw it out. So this I would recommend, and then Crayola markers I would recommend for edging decks over Sharpie. Unless, again, if you've got a black bordered deck and you just want to edge a deck in black, Sharpie pen is fine. But I have edged a lot of decks in Sharpie, and it bleeds pretty bad if it's a colorful deck. At this point, I try not to edge decks that like have, like this deck I probably wouldn't, I mean, I wouldn't really want to edge it anyway, but this deck I wouldn't edge because it's got white borders on the back and white borders on the front, so you're gonna get that like little micro border, which is fine. It's fine, but like, it just depends. Anyway, those are my random thoughts on deck mods, and just a few of the deck mods that I've done in the last week or so. So thank you guys for watching. Bye.